Hi, everyone. Today, we're going to see who's most evil. It's probably me. Anyway, welcome to the Becoming That One House podcast. Today, we have an episode for you breaking down Ben's super light sermon. So this is awkward, evil, and suffering. In case you were wondering, today, since it's been different over the summer, it's been different a lot. Today we have me, I'm Jake, and that's Josh, and that there is Ben. And if at any point you have any questions in the sermons or throughout this podcast, go ahead and put your name. Well, no, don't put your name. It's anonymous. Put your questions on the back of this card. Hand them to one of the three of us. Email us questions. You can put it on your question on Facebook, but it's less anonymous that way. Or YouTube, it's less anonymous that way too. Other than that, let's get started. Ben, evil and suffering. Can you help me remember exactly what the verses were that you preached on? It was out of Genesis because it was Joseph.
Yep. Genesis 50. And basically verse 15 through 21.
Cool. All right. So with that in mind, as an icebreaker, it's a heavy topic. So I figured I'd do something kind of opposite-ish. So what has brought you guys the most joy since we last sat down at this table, which I think was just last week, right?
Mm-hmm.
I would say I can think of two incidences that have been fun because it's been a busy season of life, and your kids are often very good at helping you slow down. And so number one was Susanna, my middle daughter, has found the love of playing football in the backyard as a family. So she will often, when I come home, have the football in her hand and be like, "Dad, let's play some family football tonight."
That's awesome.
So we get Mama out there, we get the kids out there, and we play football, and it's just a blast because you just throw your phone in the house, you put everything away, and you just go out and enjoy time with your kids. And then the other time was last night. We were sitting around the table, we were playing Life, the board game Life. And we were getting to the point where, like, you get to the married part, and so Susanna has her car, and Lena had her car. I didn't see Lena do it, but I saw Susanna do it. She had her car, and she had the girl, her, was driving. She grabs the boy, and she goes, "Oh, I got to move the girl over because the daddy has to drive." And I was like, at least I set a good precedent in the house and all that and whatever.
Raising a Complementarian by Josh Murray.
I just laughed so hard. And then Laura goes, "You didn't realize that your younger daughter did the same thing." She plucked her out, put her in the... It's like, oh my goodness. It was so funny.
That's great.
So those are two things that I can think of as of recent that have brought a lot of joy.
That's way better than mine. I mean, mine's really good, but...
Don't downplay your joy.
Mine sounds like a shameless plug, though. The neurodivergent training that we had was awesome.
That was so
and
good.
I was so proud just to be part of it and just to watch everybody kind of doing their thing and just how we're bringing appropriate exposure to an issue. You know, we want to be better. We want to show the love of Christ better. We want to be more accessible. We want to be more accommodating. We want to be better advocates. And I was just really proud at the end of the day.
Yep.
Brought me a lot. Joy is the right word for that.
Yeah, 100%.
There was a lot of people there too.
There was.
I was kind of like, it was. Yeah. Did you ever get a count of how many people?
60?
Yeah, I think we had 57 total that registered.
And this is not to make it sound bad, but not many of them were like in-house people.
No, we had many more from outside than inside.
I appreciate
70-30 maybe from
probably.
outside.
Yeah, probably close. Yep.
I appreciate that, especially for with what our mission is.
I was proud to be part of our church.
Yeah.
I am a lot of times, but definitely then.
Yeah, that's good.
Sorry, excuse me.
And Jake and your team for getting all the video footage. Well done.
Oh, yeah.
I love that your team's around now for all these things. It's so cool.
Mm-hmm.
Now that I have one.
Yeah, that's right.
Team.
That's right.
Yeah. Having one's a good start.
And that is true. Oh, that's Josh's camera. That's my camera. Hi. I'll just say thank you to all of them. I know at least 2 of them listen to this. Thank you for showing up so early. I appreciate it. What has brought me joy in the past couple of weeks is just, I guess in the past, like it's not even since we last sat down, but this whole conversation that we've been engaging in what is accessibility within this church, like it has made me feel heard in a way that I haven't heard in a long time.
That's good.
So
good stuff.
Yeah. Anyway, beyond that, you two, what is your that one takeaway from the message?
I would say the primary takeaway is, can God, specifically a good God, and evil coexist? And the answer is yes. And beyond that, not only can a good God and evil coexist, God is not the author of evil. Evil's not a created thing, which we'll kind of get into as we go. And God is doing work in the midst of sin, brokenness, evil. He's accomplishing something. He's using it to do something. So it's quite dynamic. So yes, God and evil can coexist. And I would even say that to even define evil, suffering, bad, to call something bad, to cry out, which I think is very appropriate. If you call something bad or wicked, you need something good. You need a really good standard. And I would even say the ultimate good, not just like pretty good, you know.
But you at least need a standard.
You need a standard to be able to judge or to be able to call something wicked or bad. So I think we're going to talk about that as we talk about like the worst thing needs to be grieved, and people need support and tenderness and all of those things. But also they need to realize that because they're calling it that bad, there's someone out there that's that good. And that's really good news.
Yeah, I would agree with all. There's many good takeaways from that. I think I'm gonna continue what you're saying and this idea that we have the luxury of looking at things and making decisions and being able to call them evil or whatever it is because there is a standard, like you were saying. And I think the evil in this world is terrible, and the evil in the past has been terrible. But again, it's actually evidence for a God, and I think you spelled that out well. And because if God was not there, then really it would all just be an opinion of people of what is good or bad, and there'd be no standard. And so I just think I love the conversation of how you said God did not create evil, and talking through that and trying to help a lot of people understand that, because this, I think, is one of the biggest things that critics will bring up against God, because you look through the Old Testament. We're going to talk a little bit about it next week. You look through the Old Testament of things that just don't make sense. And so we got to figure out how we reconcile, the evil and suffering we see with a good and powerful, perfect God. And I think you walked us through it well.
All right. So check 1, 2. Can you? Is it? Okay, that's still working. I just had it too far away from my face.
We are recording, right?
Yeah. Shh. Well, I need some WD-40 in here. That's no joke. So I want to talk about, a lot of times we talk about when we have a discussion like this, we have to define the terms that we're dealing with. So, and especially in the current state of society, words can be so fluid and misused and misinterpreted and misunderstood by the other party. Can I just have you guys define suffering, evil, and sin? Like, how are they different? How do they flow out of one another? Or it seems weird to say work together, but you know what I mean.
I'm going to give a definition, then I'm going to throw it to Josh to add anything or whatever, or respond. I would say suffering is a felt response to something that's perceived as wrong or bad or potentially evil. So there's going to be a little bit of overlap that we're going to talk about. I would say evil is something that is opposed to God, contrary to God, a departure from God, preferring anything more than God, Now we're going to also talk about how there's overlap between evil and sin. So I'll kind of save that for a little bit later, but that's how I would start with my definitions.
Yeah, I think that's really good. I would add that I think in a very simplistic definition of evil would just be the absence of good. Because maybe I don't want to take too much of what you might talk about away, but I think we can agree that good is the beginning thing. God created everything good.
Yep.
The absence of that good then leaves the evil, and you alluded to this with I love your rust and car analogy, right?
I'm sure you did.
I did really like that, and because anytime you can put a car in a sermon, you're off to a good start. But it's even like people have heard the statement, "The shadows prove the sunshine," like that kind of thing, right? It's even in the Switchfoot song, "Shadows prove the sunshine."
We were meant to live so much more.
Different album, but same band.
I don't know. I'm not familiar with that song.
Yeah. But the idea is that the sun, if representing good by itself, can create a shadow, and that shadow can only be there with the sun to be there. There can be no shadow without the sun.
That's right.
If you take all the rust out of the car, it makes a better car. If you take all the car out of the rust, that doesn't make any sense, because there can only be evil because there is good. It's the absence of.
See, I'm not so sure if you took all the rust out of my car, there would be a car left to be a better car.
It's probably a more theological conversation to have about that, but
all right. Anything else either you want to say about that?
That's good.
Cool. Now that we have defined the terms, let's dive a little deeper into the cultural aspect of suffering. I think it's something you kind of touched on in your message. I want to expand a bit on it. What are some examples of other cultures and faiths that have a place for suffering? And do we know if these places are designed to drive a person to, in our circumstance, God, or in other faith circumstances, whatever deity they serve?
Yep.
What do you mean by, just to clarify, what do you mean by they have a place for suffering? Like an explanation for it, you're saying, or like a...
I can start. Let me describe and then jump in.
Okay.
So I would say our cultural context, at least as long as I've been alive, and definitely before that, would be that. So we are secular humanists. We are postmodern people, meaning human will is elevated above everything, even God. In fact, this is very broad, by the way. In fact, there's not really a need for God. We're coming out of that postmodern culture, right? So, as long as if humans have enough time to develop ideas and to test theories, and we will get to the answers. We don't need God anymore because of technology, because we've arrived, because of all those things. Secular postmodernism, whatever you want to call our culture, is unique in that it really doesn't have a place for suffering at all. It doesn't even have there's nothing good to say about it. I suppose there's some sort of recognition, but all you should do is deny it, numb it out, hope that it goes away. There's definitely no value in suffering at all or evil. And so we find ourselves in that context. I'm not saying that's the way you were raised, but culturally speaking, we're in the West in the 21st century. So I just think it's something to be aware of, that I think we've been fed this, as everything is random and there's no value in suffering. And the Bible just speaks a very different message than that, And so, but to recognize that if I feel like I am responding to the suffering or evil in my life in a certain way that just tends to push it away, no category for it, just got to numb it out, it might be that part of that reason is because of the cultural context in which I find myself. I might have been taught that by the varying messages that I've received and the neural pathways that have formed and shaped my brain over many, many, many years. Yes, I also have a Christian context, myself personally. I'm generalizing. I think it's a good place to start. Mm-hmm. Other cultures, other religions, most other cultures and most other religions do have a place for suffering. Many of them there's immense value in suffering. And so, again, that doesn't make that particular religion or belief system completely right. But, again, just to completely push away suffering evil. So, for instance, I just wrote a couple examples. So, Buddhism finds value in suffering because it's about it signals your desire, and then it's about getting rid of desire, which I think is anti-Christian. But there's a place for suffering. Greek Stoic thought can help you achieve a virtuous life. Almost most belief systems, most cultures, it values suffering, even evil, although it might not call it that, depending on what we're talking about. So it's good to recognize that.
Yeah.
I was going to say, how much of that is a very specific to where we are geographically, just because America is so bought into the ways to numb a thing that we've just completely sold ourselves out to that.
Right. A lot.
And then get upset when, why don't I feel anything?
Yeah, I mean, like, even look into it when you talk about, like, I think about this with parenting and stuff like that, not necessarily like evil, but when you think of suffering or difficulty, we are so, whether explicitly or implicitly, like, against our kids having any type of difficulty, and we do everything we can to alleviate anything difficult for our kids. And in some instances, that's appropriate. But, I get funny looks sometimes when I tell people I'm actually looking for ways to cause my kids to be put in a place of difficulty in order to learn and to become better. Yeah. And I think that's what God does with us a lot of times is we got to be careful when we talk about, does God allow, does God make things happen? Those are all good conversations to have. But at a baseline, God can use or sometimes maybe causes us to be in situations where it's going to be difficult and hard, and there's going to be some suffering for you to be a better person on the other side of it, just like we want with our kids. Mm-hmm. But when we see that kids don't have anything that's difficult in their life or anything like that, you see the resiliency isn't there, and a lot of the key pieces that you need to develop into a man or a woman is not there because they haven't had that resiliency.
Yes. That's a thread that we could go on and on and on about. Mm-hmm. But speaking from a pastor and a counselor perspective, people are anxious partly because they're not resilient, because they don't have much capacity to feel things. And to be like, yep, I'm uncomfortable, but it's okay. So that's not a judgment. That's just an observation over a long period of time. We're more anxious partly because of that. And so you just want to talk about developing capacity or resiliency alone, apart from like any theological framework. It's a product of our culture.
I think, speaking at it from my particular physical perspective, like, I think of that pain, like physical pain, has a lot that plays into that, because, like, yes, physical pain is suffering, but it's not suffering in the same way that, like, someone with cancer suffers, or someone who suffers with an anxiety disorder or something like that. Like, I can remember my mom's not gonna like you talk about parents wanting to take away suffering from their kids, and I would ask, is there a difference between being a parent wanting to take away physical pain versus like just suffering that will build them? Because
100%.
My mom, when I was 18, I broke my arm just off. I think you both have heard that story. In the hospital, they had me hooked up to a morphine machine because, drugs. You could press a button every 10 minutes and it would give me, I think, 8 milligrams. No, that's too much. Like 0.8 milligrams of morphine. Well, my mom wasn't allowed to push the button. It had to be me. So she took my hand. She cupped it around the button and then held my hand down, and every 10 minutes would go. There are obviously things wrong with that scenario, but her genuine concern was, I don't want him to be in pain.
Yeah. I think that's way different. Like, if my kid is in physical pain because of something like that, I'm going to do whatever I can to make it to where they're not hurting, But if my kid is on a football field with his team and he's just getting a little tired and he doesn't want to keep up with everybody, it's like, no, let's push you a little bit. Let's dig a little deeper. Let's find that extra level that that whatever it is. Or if you don't feel like showing up to whatever, a small group or something, it's like, yeah, I know, but if I continue to let you do that, you're just going to not be resilient enough to go do it when you don't want to. And it's like, no, you need to go. Let's go. Like those kind of things.
Well, and that's the other side of what I was going to say is there's a level of the pains that I have experienced through my disability that have given me the capacity to say, I'm suffering with this now, but it's okay because it's okay. It's not okay. You know how we do that.
Yep.
But yeah. Any more thoughts on that?
No, it's a good pace setter for the rest of our conversation.
All right. Did we talk about it being designed to drive a person closer to their deity? Did you touch on that in the way that you wanted to?
We did a little bit, just to talking about the Christian walk and that kind of stuff, and how God uses those things to draw us closer to Him.
I'm going to take another little funny break here and talk about how when I was making the shorts for your message, you said something in like your very first slide that was very profound, and I was like, "Ooh, I should use that." But then behind you, there is a big picture of Brian Koberger, and you make no reference to it in what you were saying. Yeah. And it's like,
he's watching you.
What's the optics on that?
You're next. I don't know.
I don't like that.
It's bad. Sorry. See, I called it bad. How can I do that?
How could you do that if you don't know what
good was? Standard.
Weird. God.
Boy, can you imagine if we didn't have a standard to measure something like that against? That would be crazy.
That's
what the actual argument
talking about.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's all sorts of things that happen when you don't have a robust faith in the Christian God. All sorts of things where you feel like you have to minimize or there's no place for it to land.
Mm-hmm. I mean, some of the arguments that you've heard before probably is like, if you can't put it in a Christian context, you ask somebody like, let's just say like a secular atheist or something like, okay, so what's your standard then of what good or evil is? And often it's like, basically what everybody thinks, consensus, that kind of thing. And I think that falls on its face quickly when you look at World War II, for example, and the whole Nazi party, and like they convinced a lot of people to think one way. And so by that standard, is that then good? Could somebody call that good if it was consensus? It's like, no, you can't, because there's something beyond that, beyond what we all think.
That's right.
It's like, got to be careful there.
Yep.
All right. So this is one of the things from your message that my mind has been focusing on Sunday. Evil is not a created thing. I think that's a very hard thing for us to kind of wrap our heads around, because evil, or the action of evil, is always so tied to a character or a physical thing for us, like in literature, and like evil villains. They're villains because they're evil. They're physical, and evil always has a backstory and therefore would be created in that literary sort of sense. Why is it so important to remember that evil isn't a created thing?
Lots of reasons. I think one is there's this idea out there in our culture that it's random, chance, chaos, right? And then they're at best equal and opposing forces of good and evil. So it's just a healthy mixture of both, and you just hope that you get lucky. You hope that you hit the lottery, and so the worst things don't happen to you, which I think all three of us know that evil and suffering are going to take, I'm not trying to be super dark here, but everything from you. There's nothing that evil and suffering won't eventually, suffering that leads to death, that won't take away from you. You will lose everything eventually if you live long enough, or even if you don't, right? So anyway, that was morbid, but we have to go there, right? Because this is what this is. But this idea that there's equal and opposing forces of good and evil, the Bible speaks very strongly against that. And the Bible says that, again, so evil isn't a created thing. God isn't the author of evil. God restrains evil, even if it feels like he doesn't, right? And one day God will put an end to evil and suffering. And oh, by the way, he took on evil and suffering when he came to this earth, in this broken world. He lived for us. He died for us. The cross, burial, resurrection, we can get into. But the God that we serve, to me, has to be all of these things for us to have actual, what I'm going to call hope. If he's not any one of those things, I think that hope can really be elusive. If he didn't experience it himself, could he have made another way? Sure, God can do whatever he wants. But I just think that it would be the God that we love and serve would be less attractive. So there's a lot of reasons why it's so important to recognize that evil isn't a created thing, because that sounds like evil has more power and control than it really does. There is a God that is in control always has been and always will be over evil. He hates it. He uses it. He restrains it. And one day he's going to end it. And he entered it. Mm-hmm. It's a beautiful, with broken parts, it's a beautiful story, you know?
Yeah.
And so it's super important that we don't go and evil's this thing, and then there's like gods or a god, and they're just kind of like evil's this force that was non-created and God was non-created, and then who knows who's going to win, you know? Mm-hmm. That's so anti-scripture. Mm. I had a woman tell me once, I'm glad she told me. I'm not making fun. I'm not like disparaging her, but she was like, I believe in evil, but I don't know if I believe in good. And I think what she was saying is I've experienced so much brokenness in my life. I don't even know up from down anymore, you know, and I was trying to listen, but.
Yeah, that's the C.S. Lewis story you told.
Yep.
Yeah, I think ponder this statement with me real quick that I heard once, that obviously God did not create evil, but he created knowing the potential for evil.
I don't think you could say something different than that.
Yeah. And we take God and we make him responsible for evil, when the reality is that humans are responsible for evil.
Yes.
And it's a byproduct of human, from the very first, humans that were here from that choice on, has created that piece for evil. Like, again, let's go back to the car and the rust situation. The car wasn't created with rust in it.
Nope.
It's a byproduct of what has happened to the car.
Yep.
That has created the rust. You're welcome, Jake.
Tooth decay.
Tooth decay, like all of those things.
I was going to call it unoxidized rust.
The theology of oxidation. Anyways. I think he created it good and perfect, knowing the potential was there for evil, but in some ways, and not to go off in the weeds too much, has to be there in order for love to even exist. Mm-hmm. Think about that in your marriage and your relationship with people, friends, kids, all of that. It's there.
Evil is evil is because of us. Mm-hmm. It's not because of God.
Yep.
He's not the author. We ushered it in when we decided to rebel against him. And I was careful, but I had to say, like, we are very capable of committing evil acts, do commit evil acts, are in a sense evil, in as much as we have a sin nature, which we'll get into. Mm-hmm. That's not the whole story, because we're also very loved, but we are evil. Not Brian Koberger's bad and Ben Taylor's not near as bad, so like he almost registers as good because look how bad this guy is. Mm-hmm.
And by the way, without God, that's just your opinion.
That's right.
And like
he's the standard of good, right? So it could have been something different that he created and called very good, but we're still starting with he's the standard. We have what we have. He created the world. He could have created something else. We'd have to have the minds to talk about it, but whatever he says is good, and whatever he says is not good is not good. And if you don't start with that, then again, it's a crapshoot, and it's your opinion.
And what's always interesting to me is that conversation of let's get past even how you define evil. Let's just say most of society agrees there is evil. My question is always like, the response minus God, what does that leave you with? Mm. It just leaves you with more suffering, despair, and nothing.
Right.
If God is in the picture, it offers complete redemption and saving.
Right.
So
no one to restrain it, no one to end it, no one to enter it, no rescuer coming for you. Mm-hmm. Left to your own devices. I mean, talk about selling the farm, right?
Yeah.
It's like, and then what are you left with?
Yeah.
It's very hopeless.
For those of you that can't see what Ben is pointing at, he has his sermon slides in my outline, which honestly looks like what my English professors used to do to my papers. I appreciate
yours too,
that.
huh? Lots of red on it.
At least the first draft, anyways. Yeah. So I think that's interesting. Because I think also from my own upbringing, like, hesitate to call him a character, but Satan is very much coupled with evil, and so when I was growing up, to my young mind, it made it seem like Satan was the embodiment of evil. What you're saying makes it seem like evil is a tool or a sword that Satan wields.
We'd have a different conversation if Satan was created evil, right?
Yep.
Then we would say evil is a created thing, and it's not. It's a parasite on good. Satan was whatever character, the Satan, Lucifer, however you want, like there is that both embodies evil, is representative of evil, is an actual created being, right? Mm-hmm. But evil isn't. He was created good.
Do you think that over the course of our culture's history, or just history in general, coupling evil with physical things like that, with imagery, with stuff like that, has made it difficult and kind of lessened the kind of like how you talk about lessening the importance of sin, like lessened that for evil?
Yes, I think so. I think we're perpetual victims in a way. We're looking for ways to steer clear of taking responsibility. So like even in the best kind of movies, there's good representations of good and evil. I'm not saying there aren't, and I'm not saying it's not super interesting, because it is, but we're almost looking for a way. Natural disasters are a good example of this. We're looking for a way to, that's out here. That's out of my control. That's not me being bad. Look, the tsunami is me being bad, really? And like directly, of course not, right? And we'll get into the sin versus evil thing in a minute. I don't want to jump steps here, but I think that's one example of like that is in no way connected to me. And in a sense, you're right. In another sense, in a larger storytelling narrative sense, I do think that the world is sick. The actual earth is sick and groaning. And I think that is because of my sin.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And so I don't know exactly how to talk about that, like to say like God took his hand of protection off. Any one answer I give is not going to fully suffice,
right?
Mm-hmm. But there is something very sick and wrong with our world. You can trace it back. You don't trace it back to Genesis 1. You trace it back to Genesis 3. Mm-hmm. If you trace it back to Genesis 1, God created good and evil, let him kind of fight it out, and then whatever he decides at the end, I guess, is whatever. Mm-hmm. It's not the God of the Bible.
Yeah. I think the other thing that it's done with the imagery, it's interesting that we've had that imagery for, forever, since the beginning of mankind. We've had that imagery, and that should point to something, to tell you that for some reason every culture we finds this evil deity, whether you say that's Satan or whatever it is. But I think it's almost given more credence to who Satan is than what actually should be given in a lot of ways.
Okay.
So we often talk in ways, whether we mean to or not, and I think most of the time we don't, like Satan is this omniscient, omnipresent, like almost same categories as who God is.
Yes.
And the reality is he's not. He's not even close to who God is. But we because of it, I think it's made us move that up a little bit.
Earthly Jesus, super hungry and super tired in the desert, kicked his butt.
Mm-hmm. Right.
I'm just
right.
like
in human form.
Yes.
Yep.
Not using any superpowers.
Yeah. Yeah. Not that we can see.
Other than reliance on the Heavenly Father.
Yeah. Yep.
I think it's interesting just to mention it. I forget who I was talking with about it, but we were talking about this struggle of the earth is naturally good because it's created by God, and like we have brought evil on it. And one of the arguments that they were making was all of the storms and hurricanes and like weather patterns, like the violent weather patterns, are the earth trying to fight back again, like correct itself.
It's interesting.
I don't have any sort of evidence for that, but it's always been a thing that's like, that's an interesting way to think about that.
Yeah.
I think of the devil did not make me do it. But there's a real evil intelligence that is seeking any opening they can get to enhance that, to come in and to wreak havoc. And we could talk about that for hours, right? What does it look like to open that door? Give the devil a foothold. But the devil did not make me do it.
Right.
I am responsible for my sin.
Yes. He can tempt us. He can put things in front of us, all those different things. But yeah, he doesn't have control over us.
Yep.
All right. So we kind of already did this, but just again to kind of define the terms, sin and evil. Are they kind of the same thing? Do they mean the same thing? I know that.
It's actually a good question.
Yeah.
Let me say something, and then you can both respond to it. It's going to be a little oversimplified, but I'm going to say that there's a ton of overlap, but I'm also going to say that all sin is evil. but not all evil is direct sin. You could, if you trace it back all the way, like I just said, you can get there indirectly, but not all evil is direct sin. It's definitely not, you did this and this is why this is happening.
Yeah.
But all sin is evil.
You're saying it could be from past, you mean? I'm processing this with you. It's not a question I've actually been asked before or thought about.
All sin is evil. I think we should just go for it. I tried to lovingly go for it on Sunday. It's like, because of the categories of sin, like, all I did is like lust, you know? Like, well, Jesus shows up and he's like, you've committed adultery, and like it's an opposition to God. That's what we'll talk about more. It's taking God off of his seat. It goes back to the first sin, elevating myself above the throne of God and deciding for myself what's right and wrong. That can manifest itself in hundreds of different ways. That is evil. We are loved, but that is evil. So
by the way,
all sin is evil, but not all evil is direct sin. There are natural disasters that I go, that's not, we have to nuance that.
Yep.
Like you were talking about the categories of evil.
Categories of evil, being moral, human beings, natural disasters, pain and suffering, cancer, dark forces. We just talked about Satan.
I think it's interesting because I think, at least in my upbringing, and I think probably other people's upbringings too, it's like you separate the two to kind of make them understandable and palatable, but in doing that you kind of create this category of this is more of a sin than this.
I think that's a danger.
I think it naturally happens, like if you're trying to figure, if you're trying to teach this to a young child that might not understand it.
It might protect, it might serve a good purpose. Like somebody says to you, well, you have cerebral palsy because either your parents sinned or because you rebelled at some point when you were young and you're being punished for it. It might protect against that and go, no, we have to be really, really careful.
Yeah, like I think in my head, that's a little bit different because like as I was writing out this question and listening to what you were talking about, I was thinking, well, there have been a lot of times where I have taken God off of his seat and kind of done what I wanted instead. And like I've always known that was sinful, but like I think that the things that what I'm thinking through and reasoning in my head is like I knew that it was sinful, never thought of it as like evil though, but I'm not but I'm also not thinking of like overt perpetual sins that you get stuck in. I'm thinking of like, oh, I shouldn't buy this guitar because I could use this money for something better than that. Oh well, or something like that. When in reality, if you want to consider that sinful, then you have to consider it at the same level as more evil sins. At least
I think I like what you said. I think you need to be careful with that. I think Scripture is clear in some instances that there are certain things that seem to be emphasized more than others when it comes to warnings against them and what to steer clear of and what is detestable and all of those things. We could all agree that killing somebody is worse than telling somebody a lie on a base level, right? Both of those miss the mark of what God would want from us, and both of them are sin. And so there's discussion to be had there, I think, but you just got to be careful with it. And like with the natural disaster stuff too is always an interesting conversation to me. I don't know if I don't want to jump ahead. I don't know if that's where you're going with all of it, but like, I've thought about this. I haven't done a lot of research on it, but this is where my brain goes and tell me what you think about it. But I feel like in the beginning, God had this perfect place for humanity to live in, which these things didn't exist. And it was in this garden. And I think we can get a slight context for the garden, but we don't really know, like, was this like in one spot on earth, or was this like, where was this? We don't quite know. But then we find this place called earth that's, that we now live in and we're a part of, and we see all these ways that God has created all of nature to intricately work together in certain ways, which requires rain and storms and a lot of times fires and floods and hurricane. All these things can actually help work this system of Earth to work well and to grow and to change and to do these things. And then humanity is plopped in the middle of all it. And we say, well, this is God pulling the trigger and putting a hurricane here, or this is God pulling the trigger, putting a tornado over here. And I think it's less of that, and it's more we're just here living in it and seeing the natural ways of which the world works, and then seeing what effects come from it and what God does from it.
So it's possible you're saying that natural disasters would have happened if they never sinned?
Right. I'm wondering if that's how nature necessarily.
But then somehow,
well, no, because we'd still be in the garden.
Right. So there would be protection.
Correct.
Even if there was.
Correct. We don't get the luxury of the protection now because we've separated ourselves from who God is. Sure. So we are now in this broken world.
Would they have been seen as natural disasters?
Right. No, because that wouldn't be in a perfect world.
It would have happened, though. Either way, though, you're saying it would have happened outside of the garden. So if their mandate was to take the garden and multiply it throughout the earth, spread shalom throughout the world, not because the world was broken and dark, although there were dark forces at the time. There seemed to have already been sin that's inhabited this space, right? So there's that we can talk about. But then it was to apply that shalom, that peace to the rest of the world. And in so doing, as long as they did that, then you'd have to say, there wasn't a trajectory like, if tsunami comes while you're building over here,
well, and
you would have been protected, right?
Yeah, and I don't know that we get unfortunately, we don't get a long enough span of time in the garden to get a real idea of what the garden was like. Mm-hmm. We don't have a lot of description of it because we weren't there that long.
No,
so
not long at all, seemingly.
Maybe, and I could be completely wrong, and maybe if we had been there for years and years and years and years and years, we would have seen, floods happened.
Thanks,
or,
Adam and Eve.
Yeah, right. Yeah, but thanks for screwing that up. So I don't have a perfect answer for it.
Nobody does.
That's where my brain has gone in the past. And
that's interesting. So outside of the garden, though. So protection, as long as shalom continued to develop, there would have been, because then there's the flaming sword kicked outside the garden. So now they're doing life outside the garden, right? So now it's like I'm vulnerable, maybe in a way that I wasn't. Right. Paul does say that creation's groaning. I think that fits. Right. It's sick in some way.
Yep.
I think it's sick with my sin.
Yep.
Again, I'm not saying the tsunami happened because you didn't pray.
Yeah.
This is much bigger. This is a much larger narrative. But if you trace it all the way back, I am leaning toward creation is sick because of my sin.
And is there something to the fact that, and I don't know all of the descriptors that show up, but the thorns and the thistles and stuff after all of that, that's when that stuff starts showing up. Could be a place where, the things that were not, whether that's because God put it there or because then humanity started to notice these things because they're outside the garden. I don't know the answer to that, but
enmity between us and creation, not just us and the woman and us and God.
Right.
Us and creation. Now we're fighting with it.
Yeah.
To cooperate in ways that we didn't in the garden. That's good. Wow. Okay, that took a very interesting turn. No, that's good because we're talking about sin and evil, right? It's we have to talk about this stuff.
So are we ready to move on to the next question?
Sure.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Cool.
So Jake's just waiting there. He's like, "You guys done?" Or
any other weird things to talk about?
I mean, it's just another thing that happened an unfathomable amount of time ago. So.
Yeah, 6,000 years is a long time ago. I'm just kidding.
No, legit. Whether it's 6,000 years,
4.3 billion's even longer.
Yeah, it's.
I had to say something.
I wanted to, but I was like, no.
And Josh said yes.
Yeah, got to keep people's interest,
Yeah, comes at a cost, but
it does. Yeah, sure.
Let's be popular.
It's shut up.
No, I am not. It's great. Jake?
Okay, so is there something beyond our sin nature that keeps us from allowing God on the seat, on his seat, keeps us from being humble, and keeps us from allowing there to be mystery in what he does, whether that is good or whether that is bad? Now, to start, I will just say that as I was writing this question, I was like, when I allow for that type of stuff to happen, it's really scary.
Yeah. So I'll start by saying when people are going through immense pain and suffering, it clouds your judgment. It really can. It can make you not be able to see more than in front of your face, right? And so I recognize that. I care. This is not a flippant conversation. There are people in our body. We are, to varying degrees, suffering the effects of our sin, suffering in a broken world. We are also sinful creatures that are also producing and reproducing the very sin and the brokenness that we cry out against and want God to intervene and fix. And of course he has. We'll talk about that in his way, in his time. But it is our sin nature. Of course it's our sin nature. Yep. We need a robust definition of sin. Otherwise, I think you're right. We do tend to cut corners, minimize, and minimizing sin, just like whether it's our sin nature or whether it's out there and it's pressing upon me, it doesn't help me. It doesn't help me to minimize it. Mm-hmm. It really doesn't. It feels like it does. When I can wiggle out of stuff, I told white lies growing up, whatever it is, it got me out of trouble. There's a dangerous trajectory to that. Mm-hmm. You're right. To take somebody who lies for a living. Take Jacob, right? Jacob, the character in the Bible.
Take Jake, for example.
Jacob, the character in the Bible.
I don't like that he pointed at me when he said Jacob.
He's been wrestling it for a while.
Yes, he lied. He lied and deceived. He was the deceiver, right? And it came to roost. It came to a head where, it had to be dealt with if he was going to live on a different plane, for God. So I just think it's so dangerous to minimize, even if it feels right in the moment, to minimize evil out there and suffering, to minimize my own stuff. Maybe I'm not that bad, definitely not as bad as Brian Koberger. There is a place to talk about one sin being different than another, but doesn't that get dangerous pretty fast?
It's a
slippery slope, isn't it?
It is slippery.
Now I'm comparing. I'm not as bad as him. I'm okay. Right. I think I'm okay.
Yeah.
I really don't need God that much.
I think we do it the wrong way, though. The way I've always said it is that, and where you need to be careful is that what we do is we say, here's the bad sin, and then now the lesser sin is here, when the reality is what we should be doing is saying we need to be bringing these lesser sins up to here, right? So we try and take it and we say,
love that.
Here's the bad stuff. No. Sin is a big deal. We need to bring all sin up here and realize that sin is by definition bad. We need to rather than taking the sin and reducing it, we need to actually
elevate, start it here, and then take what, if we're going to call it the bad ones, which there's a whole conversation needs to be had there, but going up here rather than bringing it down. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? That's excellent. I agree with you that there has to be a place to talk about this is different than that. Mm-hmm. If I lust, first of all, how are you going to know? You're trusting my character at some level, so like that I'm at least fighting the good fight, right? Mm-hmm. But if I lust, it's not like, my job is in jeopardy. Mm-hmm. Practically speaking, if I commit adultery, I mean, spoiler alert, my job's in jeopardy.
I was going to say, at that point, I don't even know that I'd call it in jeopardy.
Yeah. No, it's not jeopardy.
It'd just be...
But some sin we would categorize it. We'd categorize it because some sin has much bigger effects than others, and that's why we would on surface.
Okay, much bigger immediate effects.
Exactly.
That same lust in my heart is going to sound terrible. It's driving me to hell.
Yes.
I'll never have cheated, and I can be religious, and I can check my boxes, and I think Jesus shows up and he says, "You're in more danger because you don't know that you need me." Mm-hmm. You're checking all the boxes. I've never done this, and I've never done this, and I'm thankful that I'm not like this person. Look at this tax collector. He's not even really allowed at the temple in worship, and I'm better than him. Yep. Now you're religious. Now I obey, therefore I'm accepted. And you are the older brother in the prodigal son story. Yep. You are in way more danger, not because you should sin so that grace should abound. So there's a tension there. Mm-hmm. But cumulative effect, he repents and comes back. Yeah. And the other one is so much more danger. And so I think but I am agreeing with you. I'm saying we have to be able to nuance this, right? We can't.
Oh, yeah. And I think the only point I'm trying to clarify is the reason our human nature is to do that. I'm not saying necessarily it's right or wrong. The reason our human nature is to do it is because if you were to kill somebody, you can see that has much more of an effect than not knowing if somebody lusts in their mind. Both of them are sin, okay?
Yeah.
But in our just human nature, what we see an effect of, we naturally will elevate. I think, and that's what
I like that a lot.
Trying to say. So the other point I wanted to say was, can I just say, I know I'm on staff here, but just as somebody who still sits under your preaching, that I really appreciate that we as a church and you as a pastor still talk about sin.
Yep.
And talk about the reality of what sin is. I think it's important, and there's a lot of places that don't do that, so I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Man, we have a whole podcast on it.
Yeah. And secondly, speaking of Jacob, did you...
Uh-oh. What'd I do?
Did you see I have to mention it because it's funny. We need to give people a laugh at home. Did you see the Babylon Bee after Hulk Hogan left? And it shows Hulk Hogan in heaven, says Hulk Hogan challenges Jacob to a wrestling match in heaven. I was laughing for so long.
You know,
oh my gosh,
I
don't
think.
Let me tell you something, brother.
That's really good.
I've done
a lot of wrestling in my life. I'm ready for you. 1 night, 2 nights, 10 nights, doesn't matter.
I don't think the Babylon Bee always
I'm a real American.
Oh my goodness.
I don't think the Babylon Bee always hits, but when they do, they hit
golden.
hard.
It's golden. It's so funny. And some people still don't know that it's satire, which drives me
How
nuts,
do you
but-
not?
The double reason why this is good to tell this joke is because, first of all, it's a good joke. But second of all, he from what I understand, he became a genuine follower of Jesus about 2 years before he died.
Yeah. Yep.
That's incredible.
Isn't it?
You thought the angel had something for you. Let me tell you something. Sorry.
Well, look at us. We're talking about sin. We're talking about, what else do we talk about? Rust on cars. Now we're talking about
Hulk
Ben's
Hogan.
Hulk Hogan
And
impressions.
mustaches.
Next thing you know, he's going to start singing.
You thought your limp was bats. Okay.
Hold on.
Thought you were hip.
Can you sing in that voice?
I don't know.
What would you want to sing in that voice?
Kel, please keep
I don't
going.
know.
It's going to be 2 hours.
Haven't you always?
It is going to be 2 hours.
Haven't you always wondered what Hulk Hogan sounds like singing?
Not until now.
No.
And now we'll never know. Anyway, so with all of that in mind, we talk a lot about how a lot of what we invest in and a lot of what we go through in this life won't see dividends until we are long gone. Mm-hmm. How do we cope with something, with the fact that intense suffering that we have might not show what God is doing to take that, to quote, was the verse, how
am I in the place of God, first of all? Joseph. You're talking about Genesis 15.
No,
and then you intended for evil, but God intended for good.
What do we do when what God is intending that evil for does not show itself until after we're gone? Like, how do we cope with that wall?
That's an excellent question, and I'm going to go not with the question, but I'm going to take this in a different direction. I'm just going to say, notice all of how loaded. It's a good question, but notice how loaded that question is. How much entitlement there is.
Yeah.
I think about your cultural context, right? I'm not speaking for you two. I'm just saying in general, how much it's in nature, obviously, but like I have to know for it to have meaning. I have to know. He has to reveal it to me. I have to be able to make sense out of it. If I can't make sense out of it, then now I'm doing what? I'm starting to doubt his goodness, doubt his existence. He's on the hook. He's on trial, not me. It's up to him. He has to let me see it. If I can't think of a good reason, there can't be one. This is the height of the Tower of Babel, by the way. This is the height of human intelligence apart from God and where it leaves. God says spread out. They say no because we're not as effective. God actually, the heavenly court is actually like, wow, like what we've created, like these human beings, I'm not saying he was surprised. I'm just saying in the narrative, right? It's like they're capable of some stuff,
Yeah.
We got to intervene because they're capable of some stuff. But like, this is the height of human pride. I'm not saying you're saying that in the question. I'm just saying, just feel for a minute with me how loaded that is, And I'm also, I want to be careful because I'm not saying like, again, somebody's suffering, and it's real for them, and they're desperate for relief. But I'm trying to disconnect that. So crying out to God, wonderfully healthy, and all of those things. Taking God's seat is incredibly unhealthy. It started at a place where you're suffering and you're experiencing evil, but it can easily turn into now you have a much bigger problem. Because now you're trying to take his seat and you're trying to make up for what you don't have. And of course the cross tells us the who and not the why, and we can get into that in a minute. I'm just saying, just feel how chock full and loaded that question is of I'm really in charge. He's got to produce for me. He's got to tell me. He's got to come through. It really feels like that question says, like, this is a good question, but we're in charge to me. That's how it feels. He's got to give this, and we're talking about the creator of the universe, which is interesting.
So, are you saying that having that sort of stance of wanting to know what the outcome of whatever you're suffering is going to be, what the good part is?
I'm saying there's a fine line between wanting and needing, and now I'm just.
But it opens up a way for us to kind of argue with God in a capacity.
Job suffered more atrocity than I will in 10 lifetimes. Okay, 1 lifetime because I'm Christian. But even if I had 10 lifetimes, right? He's going to suffer. He suffered more than us cumulatively if we're measuring it, right? But he was vindicated because he kept crying out to God. Mm-hmm. That's what Job teaches us.
It's I do think it's a good question though, and I would say 2 things come to mind. First, if we want to just help to understand how to cope with that fact, because I think it is a reality for some people, and I think we teach that you're not often we don't get to see the blessing on the other side that you suffer through to maybe give somebody else.
Would you agree with that?
But yeah, 100%.
Usually we don't see much, right?
Yeah. I would say look back at the faithfulness of God in your life and of God and the people around you, those who you love. That speaks volumes when it comes to God's character, and you can probably point back to things in your life that were done from people in your past that have led to where it's at now, and the good things that have come from it. So I think we get glimpses of it in some way in our own life and through the faithfulness of God.
I think so too.
I don't remember who. The other thing I thought of was a quote that I heard once. Maybe you know who said this, but somebody said, "If I had the power of God to stop evil, I feel like I would probably do it in an instant. But if I also simultaneously had the wisdom of God, I'd leave everything the way it is."
Yeah,
cites that that sequence in Bruce Almighty when he answers everybody's prayers and Buffalo catches fire.
Mm-hmm. Just in Buffalo, he couldn't even handle it.
Right. Like, and there's a, like, if you just like sit on that quote for a minute and realize the gravity of that quote, like it's so true. If we could see beyond time throughout eternity, we would probably just see the amazing beauty of what God can string together through evil and suffering in the world.
And again, I was waiting till the end for this, but I don't want to run out of time and not do this. But the cross, right? The cross is the ultimate example. Yep. Yeah, so I literally rounded off the message with... Right?
Just imagine at the foot of the cross. I think that's,
There's no way God could do anything good with this. God's messed up. He's gotten it wrong. You know, again, you're in danger of
all of our hope is gone.
Yep. And he was doing his most beautiful thing. So you count with that and the resurrection, he was doing by far the most beautiful thing for humanity that he's ever done.
I think it's interesting when I see people use the Jesus on the cross sort of thing as kind of the imagery of, like what you said, God holding back the darkness. And I just sort of think, that's not accurate because that was partially defeating. Defeating the darkness. Mm-hmm. My brain's weird. Sorry, my brain's weird.
Why? You're making perfect sense.
No, I also think that this is interesting for me because I have such a different perspective on life in general because of what my parents have gone through to raise me and like what I go through just on a general basis. And I think that a person in this place can often kind of get lost in like looking for the big ways that God takes evil and turns it for good instead of just maybe the little ones, you know?
Somebody from our church, won't name the name, she said after the message, she said, we're in a spot right now where we are just asking the question, God, what do you want out of this? How can we glorify you in this? You don't even have to tell us exactly how you're working, obviously. This is, we might see it later, but what do you want our posture to be? How can we respond, and how can we glorify you? Because it's not about is he working. Again, if God pulled this off on the cross, like the chances are pretty good that like he's pulling it off and wanting to and able to do the very same thing in your lives that aren't going to like sound exactly the same. I think the theme is going to be the same, where it's brokenness, it's evil, it's suffering, and he's using evil against itself. He's bringing about his glory and our good. That both is practically here and now, but also trajects into eternity, right? And so we have to be careful how we define that. But yeah, I
think that just to offer, if I can, some kind of encouragement towards this, I think if you start looking for the little things, and even the things that, like you said, looking back on your life and looking for God's faithfulness, to look back and be able to say that God is faithful through this. So like in my own life, like the whole reason I am here in this building doing this is primarily because I broke my arm off. Like it just is. Like that's the reality. So God took that and used it assumedly for good, because now I'm here, assuming that that's good.
Yep.
And what he intended.
Yes. Glimpses, small things.
So then to look back on that and say God was faithful through that, but like because I can't see this, he's clearly not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you say it like that, it does sound entitled, like what you were saying.
But it also leads to a real dark and disconnected place from hope and from God. And you're never more than one step removed. I'm not saying like you can get so far away from God that he forgets about you. Like I repent and turn back and all that kind of stuff. And I know it's hard when we're suffering. I'm trying to detach the suffering is real, the evil is real. It matters to God because he entered it,
Yeah.
But not, not like, well, but that means I will doubt his existence and his goodness. I'm saying lovingly and caringly, trying to know that there is no, I can both empathize with your suffering, whatever's happening to you, be with you, and also safeguard you from this place that I'm not just going to go, yep, it makes sense. Yep, it's fine. It's dangerous.
Yeah, we've used these statements, I think, as I don't know if I want to say cop-outs in some ways, but just like the easy answer to not have to actually sit with people where they're at, because I've said this to you before, but like often when you hear these things about evil and suffering, and we just talk about the tactile things when it comes to this conversation, like at the end of the day, if somebody's going through intense suffering in their life, they don't need somebody to sit down and talk about the theology and philosophy of what all this means. They need somebody to just be there and to counsel them, and they need somebody that can be with them. And then maybe get to that point where we talk about these things, right? But they need somebody there with them to just be. And then maybe at some point you can come and say, hey, listen, like, we can look at how faithful God has been. We can look that God probably will use these for good. But to say that right on the onset is just such a I think a bad play.
Agreed.
On that note, just because we're starting to bleed into the last question I have here.
Well, I thought that's where we were. I'm sorry.
On that note, I think we all know for someone who is actively suffering, hearing the words "God works all things for good" or "God takes what the enemy meant for evil and turns it to good," like it can sound hollow and
all true statements. But
it's amazing how we can take the word of God and make it sound trite, because it's so rich and like deep.
So my question is, how do we not just like. Yeah, how do we meet those people where they are, emphasize with them, and reflect this truth in a way that they understand the understanding of God and the goodness of God without undercutting their suffering?
Did you mean to say empathize with them?
Didn't I say that?
I think you said emphasize.
Oh, yes. I meant to say empathize.
It's hard to say. It's hard to
emphasize.
Empathize.
Empathize. There we go. Yeah.
Yep, I agree with Josh. I think talking much at all at first is probably getting off to a false start most times. But I also I want to safeguard this, right? Because I've heard that a lot growing up, and I've appreciated that. I think that's been necessary. As soon as Job's friends open their mouths, they're morons. So, right? They were the best that they did is when they were quiet, and yet,
Job. I'm sorry. I thought you said
Joe.
You said when Joe's friends open their mouth. I was like,
every time.
Wow. Wow, that's
Ben. Every time you've said Job in this
See how
podcast,
you feel about Joe's
I
friends?
thought you were talking about Joe.
shows how theologically astute you guys are. No,
well, there's a reason you're the lead pastor.
No, I know. Job's. Look at the camera. Anytime I've said what you sounded like Joe, I said Job. Job.
Like okay. Job.
Yep. Which is a Wedgwood kid. I came into his room and he's reading the Bible. He's like, I'm reading about this Job guy. He sounds pretty interesting. And I almost cried and laughed at the same time. Where was I? Oh yeah, it's just I've appreciated that, but we really do need to talk about when it is time to speak up, protect somebody that is vulnerable. They need care and advocacy. What does that look like? It looks like me sitting there and listening, obviously, and empathizing. It means maybe bringing them a meal. It means a lot of things. But you know what else it means? It means theologically. I have to be able to come alongside them and offer them theological protections. I have to try to protect them from themselves. I can't just dismiss that and go, just be quiet and be the best quiet you can be. And that's not all of it, right?
You shouldn't worry about this thing because God will use it for good.
It's almost like I'm trying to close that door, and I'm not trying to close it. I want to very much come alongside and meet them wherever they are. But the same God that meets us where we are doesn't leave us where we are, right? And so we're trying to reflect all of that, which is like I like the idea of we're framing it, but we're leaving room for mystery. Not a created thing, not the author, currently restraining, entered it, one day put an end to it. There are things that we need to keep saying to each other to remind ourselves, to frame this conversation. Now, in that context, in that framework, cry away, scream your head off, cry out to this God. You really can grieve and lament and journey with people through this with the framework. I did a message on grief a couple years ago, and I said something like, God is framing that space. Grief doesn't mean anything. It means something specific that operates within a space. Because one thing, people combine or couple grief to like panicking. Well, I'm just grieving. Maybe not. You might be panicking. You might be in a panic loop, and we might need to deal with that so you actually can grieve, right? So we need to define our terms just like we have through this. I want to share a story quickly. It's a friend of mine, and she's enough connected to this church, and she wouldn't mind me sharing, but she lost her brother in a car accident a long time ago, and we grieved together. We wrestled with this for a long period of time, and there was one moment because she didn't know. I don't know that she knows today or is confident today, but she didn't know at the time if her brother was saved. He died when he was a teenager. She really didn't know if he was saved. Mm-hmm. And what I said to her was, it was time for me to speak, and it was time for me to speak about this big, loving God that we serve. And she needed a big God. Yes, she needed a loving God, but she needed a big God in that moment. And I said, it didn't happen outside of his control. I don't know what the answer, I don't know the why. So we talked about the who, of course, Jesus. But I said, if he was going to be saved, he's saved. It didn't happen outside of God's control.
Right.
That you can rest in God being good and God being in control. It's not like, oh no, he died a horrible death. If he would have lived 20 years longer, he'd be in God's presence for eternity. But because he didn't, he's not. Our God is much bigger and much more loving, but much bigger than that. We need to keep God big. We don't want to dilute and minimize and reduce because the short-term gains are not worth the long-term effects. I'm just telling you. There's tension still in her story about that. I'm not trying to relieve that all. I'm just saying it's so important that we keep God big. And in that moment, she needed, in moments to follow, but in that moment, she needed a big God. And we got to be careful, So,
good.
One small example.
Anything else, you guys?
We did kind of cover the last one, didn't we?
I did ask the question.
Yeah. That's good.
Okay. Well, that are our thoughts on evil and suffering. That's all of them, though. You don't get any more. There are no more. We covered them all. All of them.
You're not even allowed to struggle anymore. We've solved everything.
You don't get to suffer. We have taken that away from you.
But if you do, God will use it all for good, so it's fine.
Yeah. He works everything for good, so it's fine.
Anyway, if you want to check us out during the week in between podcast episodes or just for the fun of it, we're making reels and stuff on YouTube. You can check us out on all major social media platforms. If you want to ask us a question, there are these cards in the pews. Please write your question on the back here. You can also email them to us, Jake, Josh, or Ben at spartacenter.org. You can also email them to info@spartacenter.org. Remember that your question is completely anonymous. We will never use your name. Even if you ask us to use your name, we'll probably be like, nah. Anyway, next week, Josh, you have another fun. What are we doing with this series, Ben? What are we doing?
I'm glad you asked because he's going to land in a specific place.
Yep.
Not necessarily everything that's on that sheet. You want to share it all?
Yeah. No, we're gonna talk about, does God condone slavery?
Okay, so we're axing the genocide.
We're axing genocide. I originally was let's axe genocide. We were gonna talk about both, but it's just too big.
That's fair.
To bundle together. So let's tackle one, and maybe we can come back at another time and talk
We're going to
genocide. We're going to genocide. Set aside genocide.
Set aside.
You're good.
Genocide.
Yeah,
you are good.
I don't know. So, anyways, but we're going to talk about, does God condone slavery?
All right. And so if you're excited about that, please come to, even if you're not excited about it, please come to church on Sunday. In fact, come to church on Sunday.
Maybe don't go with your feelings on this one.
Yeah.
Come regardless.
Yeah.
We love you. We want you here.
Yeah. Anyway, bye.